Hey there neighbors, Kevin here with eTrailer, and today we're going to be taking a look at and showing you how to install the CURT double lock underbed gooseneck kit here on our 2017 Chevy Silverado 2500. So if you're like our neighbor today and you need to tow a gooseneck trailer, a gooseneck hitch is going to be a required component here. So there's a lot of options when it comes to gooseneck hitches, and typically I do like to recommend B&W because it gives you that added benefit of being able to tow a fifth wheel by dropping in their companion fifth wheel hitch. But even with the CURT gooseneck hitch, you can still tow a fifth wheel. This is going to be a gooseneck connection point though, so you will be kind of limited on some of the things you can do. So if you have a rotating pin box, you will need to lock that out. But you could still throw in a variety of different options when it comes to fifth wheel hitches. CURT has one called the Crosswing, Demco has one called the Recon, and there's a variety of other options out there as well. I won't get too into the weeds with. But overall, this is going to give you a nice solid connection point. The cool thing about this hitch is that it has a dual lock going through it. So you're going to have two pins actually sliding through this instead of just one. So it gives you that added security. And on top of that, it still has the same kind of features as our B&W turnover ball kit, because you will be able to easily just store your ball right inside of the hitch. It's got a nice little handle so you can grab it. It'll drop down in there, and then you can throw on your cover. So that way you don't have to take a greasy, messy ball inside of the cab and have that rolling around or just rolling around the bed of your truck. It's easily stored inside of here, and that really doesn't have too much of a gap to where it's sticking up over our ribs in our bed. So you are still getting a lot of space in here. You're not having to worry about slipping over some base rails or having something stick up too high to where now it's going to interfere with anything you're wanting to put in your bed. So overall, this is going to be a great option for you if you are looking for a gooseneck hitch. This specific gooseneck hitch is going to have a 30,000 pound gross towing weight capacity, which is the force from pulling a trailer behind you. As far as the vertical load limit, that is going to be 7,500 pounds, which is the pin weight of your trailer pressing down on the bed. Now that is a pretty high capacity. It's not always going to be the same that your truck can handle. So make sure that you are verifying in your owner's manual exactly what your truck is capable of and then staying within those means. Along with that, I do kind of want to show you exactly how this functions. So we dropped our ball in already. I've kind of pulled that out a few times. You will want to make sure that you have the side that's got the slots in it going vertical. You want those on the passenger side because there is a little post inside of here where that's going to match up with. If we look over on our other side, it's just the two holes. So we'll drop that in. I'm going to go over on my driver's side, and then I can show you the handle as well. So our handle is in the latched out position right now. You can see just by how far it's sticking out. If I want to, what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull back on it, release that tension, and just straighten it out. So right now, if you turn it just slightly over towards the front of the vehicle, that'll lock it into place. If you pull back, put it straight, let it go, it'll send those two posts right on through and lock our ball into our gooseneck hitch. Now, one of the other features that kind of makes this one stand out is that you can put the handle on both the driver or the passenger side, whereas most are only going to have a spot for it on the driver's side. Now, in most cases, being on the driver's side is going to be the best option because typically by yourself, you're going to hop out, come back here, latch or unlatch. So it makes more sense to have it on the driver's side. But if for whatever reason you want to have it on the passenger side, you can easily just take it right off the driver's side, switch it over to the passenger side, and be all ready to go. As far as installation goes, this one actually is pretty simple to do. I've done a few different CURT goosenecks as well as some other brands, and usually it's not the most fun day. This one actually just went in really easy. I didn't really have to struggle too much. I think the worst part was honestly just taking the fender liners off and then putting them back in. So this is one you can definitely do at home. You will need some torque wrenches. You will need a 1/2-inch drive torque wrench and probably a 3/8 drive torque wrench just so that you can get into some of these spots because it is pretty tight. Those are something you can easily pick up here at eTrailer, or you can just rent them from your local auto parts store. Usually there's a tool rental program so that you can get those for free. Just put a deposit down, obviously. Aside from that, I mean, you could even do this on the ground. We don't need the lifts to really do this. That's more just for the camera so you guys can see at home. So overall, I do think this is something you can do yourself at home in just probably a few hours. But if that is something where it just kind of feels a little too daunting or you just really don't have the time to get it done and you got a trip to go on, definitely feel free to use our dealer locator, and you can enter in your zip code to find a shop near you and get it professionally installed. If you are wanting to do this yourself and you want a little bit of help, stick around and I'll walk you through the process. begin our install, we're going to first remove our spare tire, which I've already done, and then from there we're going to be taking out our heat shield. After that, we're going to get to our rubber isolators and drop our exhaust. So you will also want to have a strap, just a cam strap. You can throw it up over the frame and just help support your exhaust, but you will want to be able to move a little bit more so you can give yourself some more room while you're getting everything into place. So, starting out with our heat shield, we're going to need a 1/2 inch socket. We're going to have 2 bolts. There's one right here and then one hidden up on our cross member right here behind the heat shield. For the one behind that, I'm using an extension to get up to it, and then I'll probably take that off to get to the one that's on the frame rail. All right, so with that removed, I've already sprayed a little bit of silicone lubricant on our post running into our rubber isolators. I have a isolator removal tool. If you don't, you can still use a pry bar and get these off. This just makes it a tiny bit easier. And you can also see I've got my strap here too, kind of interfering with me getting my tool on. Let me pop that in there. And I want to even budging. There we go. So I switched over to the pry bar. This is the easier option for this one at least. And I'm just prying against the side of our exhaust. Now these ones at the back I already kind of tested with the removal tool. They popped out pretty easily. So I'm going to finish those off. That's all resting on our cam strap, and we can adjust that as we need. For our next step, we're going to be either removing the heat shield or cutting it. That's going to be your preference. So it's this one right up here. I'm just going to remove it. It's 1 bolt here, 1 bolt here, 1 over on that cross member, and 1 on this cross member, and it's going to be a 1/2 inch socket or wrench that you're going to need for that. I don't feel like trying to fight around everything here and avoid sensors and stuff while trying to cut with my multi-tool. If you are wanting to cut it and still keep this little section of it here, what you're going to want to do is cut it from this hat channel back to that cross member, or actually all the way back to the other hat channel essentially, which means you're essentially just cutting off this whole half of it. So at that point you might as well just remove the whole thing, because it's not like the exhaust is super close anywhere except for really right there. So like I said, I'm going to pop out those 4 bolts, get the heat shield out of the way, and then we'll be good to move on to our next step. Now for our next step, we're going to be slotting in our cross arm beams here. Now if you do have a fender liner, you might have to move it out of the way. Mine is in that zone where I probably am going to have to move it, because the lip of it's probably about 1 inch down past the pinch weld up here on the bed. So I probably will pop this out. I think it's like a T15 Torx bit for those. And we might not have to take the whole thing out. I'm hoping not, just because of how dirty this is. You can see all that sand and mud all over that. I don't want to get that all over the place. But if you don't have the fender liner, you can just skip right past that point, and here's where we need to determine which rail is for what side here and which way they need to go into it. So if you look, there is a little notch in one of the rails. That is to go over the gas tank. So that makes it pretty easy to determine exactly which way this one's going to go. So this should be on the driver's side, and we want our bolt holes all down at the bottom of the rail along next to that little cutout. Same thing with the back rail going towards our tailgate. That is also going to need to have the holes down at the bottom so everything lines up with our center section. And one thing you definitely want to do is take a 1/2 inch by 13 bolt and just kind of run it right through there, or a tap. I already went ahead and did a tap just to clean out all of these threads, because they just spray right on over it and get a bunch of paint down in the threads, and then it's a huge hassle trying to get the bolts in. So definitely go ahead, run your taps through, or a bolt. If you have an extra 1/2 inch by 13 bolt, what I like to do is, if you don't have a tap, is just take a angle grinder and then cut like kind of an X pattern into the top of this. I think I actually have one I can show you. Yeah, so as an example, here's a different bolt where I just kind of cut diagonals through it, and that'll help us clean out the threads without it getting caught, and still have some space for that paint to kind of go into that groove as you're kind of running it through. You could also, like I said, just cut through the top. I cut like an X pattern through it, just go down about 1/4 inch, and that's usually good enough to get you through. Depending on how flexible yours is, you might be able to just kind of bend it up out of the way. I think I'm just going to pull it out just to make it easier in general. All right, it was 12 T15 Torx bits. screws in this liner here, so yours probably will be the same if you have it. From there, try and pull this down. So once again, make sure that you have the orientation correct. We're going to put these in, and then we'll use a adjustable crescent wrench or a pair of pliers like channel locks, and then we'll flip it up once we actually have it in place and we have a little bit more room. But to get it past this lip, run that in. And like I said, we can kind of flip it up. You'll have a little bit of a fight from the bed, but that's why the tool will make it a lot easier. But I'm gonna slide this out of the way. We can get our other rail in too, towards the rear. I think I want to try and flip it this way. There we go. And I'm going to get under there with my pliers and we can flip those. Usually you're kind of pinching the whole way. That one too, pretty easy. Next we're going to be installing our side plates. And these are side specific. You will want to make sure that you have it with that longer piece going towards the tailgate. And we'll butt our rearmost rail all the way up to our hat channel here. And then you can see this will line up with the holes that are already in our frame rail. I'm going to have to go back over to the other side and push that bar over a little bit more just because I'm kind of pushed in too much to the passenger side, but we're going to be putting some hardware in on both sides here and tying these together. I just want to kind of dry fit it all, make sure everything's perfect before we go ahead and try to do all that. All right, for our hardware, it's going to be the hex bolts, and we're going to be using a split lock washer and a flat washer. And those are going to go in from the bracket side into our rails that we have. And to tighten that up, I'm going to be using a 3/4 inch socket. Now, I kind of overdid it pushing it over here, but I'm kind of fine with that. I'd rather have a lot of wiggle room on this side while I get it first one started. And once we have it kind of lined up better with the two rails, it should be a little bit easier on the other side. Just line it up. Now we're going to go do the same thing on the other side. If you want to just go ahead and take out both liners, probably make your job a whole lot easier for you too. Next we're going to be fish wiring in our carriage bolts, our spacers, and then we'll have a flange nut to finish that off with. Starting out, we'll do our back hole, front hole here. Going towards the tailgate, this other hole, or need to be on the inside of the frame rail to get to the hole that we're going to pass through for that one. So what we're going to do, I'm going to take the end that would thread onto our bolt. We're going to pass that through, have it come out this larger hole right in front of it. Then we can throw on a spacer block and our carriage bolt. And I don't fully thread it on. I'll go a good majority of the way though. Makes it a little bit easier if you don't fully thread it to try and get it unthreaded later on. Pop that through, and we're going to flip around, put the head of the bolt in so that way we can actually pop it through, which isn't always the easiest. Sometimes you might have to kind of grind out just a bit more, which looks like that's going to be the case for us today too. Yep, I'm going to take my grinding bit and we'll fix that real quick and then pass this through. All right, ground a little bit off the top of that so that our bolt will fit in there. Although, there we go. Pass that in, got our wire in. We want to be careful, we don't want to tear up the wire too much because we are going to have to reuse it. And once we get that right, we can pop in our bolt. We might need to kind of play with this a little bit. You see we're kind of off slightly, so I might have to persuade this with the mallet, kind of push it back a little bit. All right, now we're going to take off our fish wire. Like I said, try to be careful on threading it off of here, so that way we can reuse it. Mine's not really wanting to cooperate though. There we go. All right, now behind the jounce bumper, you'll see a hole. It's kind of hidden by this wire harness, but you can see our bracket up there, and that's exactly where we're trying to get to. So I'm gonna feed in my wire. I already have my carriage bolt and my block on there. This is gonna just pretty much go straight in at this point. You just gotta get your fish wire through, which honestly isn't too bad on this side. Then just fight past the wire harness. Once you get it past that, then you can just use the fish wire to pull it up the rest of the way. There we go. So same thing, there's like another weld nut in the way, kind of blocking the spacer block. Once you get past that, it should just drop right through. And we can thread on our flange nut. And then we'll just repeat this over on the passenger side as well. For our next step, we're going to take 2 of our 1/2-inch bolts. We're also going to take our little template here. You can see it's got a forward arrow and an F saying to face it towards the front of the vehicle. And with how this is shaped, you want that piece kind of resting up against the bottom of the bed, because this hole right here is going to be our pilot for what we drill for the center section, so that way we can get our gooseneck ball in there. So we're going to, like I said, grab those 2 bolts. We're going to get this in place, and then we can start drilling out that pilot hole. Now we're going to take a 1/4-inch drill bit, and we will drill through that little template so that we have our pilot hole. With our pilot hole, now we can remove our template, so just back those bolts right back out. Now I'm going to drill down with my 4-inch hole saw. One other thing I like to do just as extra protection so we don't have this walking on us or moving too far out is just take a board, and you can step on that board, have a 4-inch hole cut out through it already, and then that'll kind of help keep us going straight down, especially since we're going to be cutting on these ribs right here. So, all right, next I'm going to file any burrs that are still on here and just kind of get this nice and cleaned up, and then from there we'll vacuum, and we're going to hit it with our paint marker, prevent any rust or corrosion from happening. All right, we let our paint dry. We took a lunch real quick, so I have hiccups now in case you hear any of that going forward. Center section here, I've got it sitting out. I've got my hardware ready to go. We're going to have 8 bolts, 4 per side, and there's going to be a split lock washer and a flat washer on each one of our bolts, and these are going to go in through the center section into our cross beams. Now you notice that the hole is closer to one side versus the other. The side that it's closer to is going to go towards our tailgate. The other side will go towards the cab. So at this point now we can actually lift this up now. So what I'm going to do is come over, I'll try to turn it a little bit to the right and get it up over our exhaust and then onto the frame rails. And then we can kind of slide it back over the rest of the way on this side and start getting our hardware in place. This is a little bit heavier, so you might want to have a second set of hands if you don't feel too confident with it. But it's really going to be just kind of manhandling this into place. Which, honestly, not too bad. Especially for a gooseneck hitch, this one is going in pretty easily. Get a couple bolts on each side, and that'll help hold it up. Alright, I've been snugging these down. I've got 2 left. Once again, we're using our 3/4 inch socket. Now that's snugged. We could technically torque it, but I want to double check and make sure that we have this exactly where we need it to. Technically we should, or at least be pretty close. But since there is a slotted hole on either end with those side plates, there is a little bit of wiggle room to kind of move this back and forth. So I want to make sure that I have it just perfect before we go ahead and torque anything down and then have an issue where it doesn't want to slide enough for us. So when you're doing your torquing process, you're going to want to get the center section bolts, so that'll be these 8 bolts right inside here, done first. From there we're going to move over, we'll do our carriage bolts on the outside of the frame rails, and then finally, third step is going to be the connection point between our cross beams that are running over and then those side plates. So I'm going to get started on this. Make sure that you got the correct torque. It is a higher torque for those carriage bolts because they are thicker. All right, now we're getting those carriage bolts. This is our second set to torque. All right, now we're on to the cross beam to our side plate bolts. So those 2 on each side. Already got the driver's side done. So this is one where I'd probably want to have the wheel removed just so that you got a little bit more room with your torque wrench, but we're gonna struggle through it. Might only get like a click or 2 at a time. There we go. All right, now it's time to do our safety chain holes. So for those loops to go through, we're going to need to drill holes into the closer slotted holes in our center section here. You'll see there's outer ones. They don't want you to do that because you could potentially drill down into the fuel tank. So you can go in the center and go a little bit closer if you want, but you will want to make sure that it's enough to where you can get that full U-bolt through there. So I like to just personally go with the center so I don't ever have to worry about that. But you will want to make sure from front to back, so try to get under it as best you can. Really find that true center. I'm going to be using a step bit to slowly walk this a little bit bigger until we can get it large enough for our U-bolts to drop through. Alright, once you get that cut out, take your file, clean up your edges, and then we'll paint this again with a black marker. Alright, now we're going to do the other side, and then we can get down below. So for each one of these ends, we're going to need a spring, 2 of our flat washers, and our lock nuts. And actually, I'll put a flat washer on first. Then our spring, slide that up. Put another flat washer on, and then our lock nut. And we're going to put our lock nut as tight as the bolt, just kind of flush up against the edge of that. So I'm going to get the other one on, and then I'm just going to use my impact to push that up a little bit more. And this is going to require a 3/4 inch socket. All right, next step's going to be putting in the rod or handle, however you want to call it. And I've already got it started here. So there's a hole in our center section and then another hole right here. And we want to make sure we get it into both of those. There we go. Before we push it too far, we're also going to take our double lock here for our center section. You see one side's open, that top one, and it's got a hole through it so we can put our hardware in, and that's going to match up with our handle. So we're going to want to stick that in. We'll bring this over, a little bit. We don't want to go all the way just yet because we also need to slot on a flat washer, a spring, and then we're going to put another flat washer on there. We're going to need to press that a little bit. Okay, I'll get that in a bit. There we go. And now we just want to line up the hole so that we can get our screw through there, which we got right over here. And this is a really tiny screw. You're going to need a 5/16 and a 9/32 socket to get this actually tightened down. I'm going to push it through the back and put the nut on the closer side so we can see it here. It's hard to get my hands up in there. Now I'm using the 5/16 on the nut side, 9/32 is on the bolt side. And our handle should work now. Have our spring to pop it back in place. And once I'm outside, I can kind of pull it enough to lock it out of that too. There we go. All right, at this point I am now kind of reinstalling some of the stuff that we took apart, but our next step is technically going to be getting back up top and putting on the trim ring that's going to go over the top of our gooseneck hitch in the center section there. And what I'm going to do instead first is just get my exhaust back up on the hangers. I already got the two back there, about to get this one here. And then I'm going to throw on my wheel well liners again. That's a little bit of a process, so kind of wanted to get started on that. And then after that, we can also reinstall our heat shield as well. Next, we're going to have this ring that's going to go on top. You'll see there's the 3 holes for it. We'll pop that in. And this is just getting snug down. It's not anything crazy where you're torquing it. Once you have that in place, you can also go ahead and throw on this little trim piece that they have to go around the hole. Honestly, with us having a spray and bed liner, it's not going to fit. So we're going to skip that today, but if you wanted to, maybe you didn't have the spray and bed liner, you just still had this straight metal bed, that would help give you a softer edge on it. And with this already having the spray in, it already kind of looks pretty good. So we'll just snug that down like I said. Now that we have our trim ring on up top here, last thing to do is either throw in our ball in the actually towing position or in the stud position. And if we do throw it in the stud position, CURT also gives you a little rubber plug, prevent any rain from getting in there and corroding it up and making it to where it doesn't want to slide in and out nice and easily. Now you will want to make sure that you also lubricate this as well. They recommend silicone spray. I typically recommend some kind of white lithium grease, so that way you're not having debris stick to it and then clogging it up. Now when you're dropping this in, make sure you are putting it on the correct side. On the passenger side, there's a little post inside of our hole here, and that's going to line up with the slots that we have here. So if I was putting this in the stud position, I can drop it right down, pop in my cover, and then we're all good to go. So now with our cover in place, everything's torqued, everything's tightened down, we have our fender liners back in place, our heat shields back in place, spare tires put back. That is going to do it for our install of the CURT double lock underbed gooseneck kit here on our 2017 Chevy Silverado 2500. My name's Kevin. If you still have some questions about what's going to be the right gooseneck hitch for your specific setup, or you still have installation questions, please feel free to reach out to us via our Ask the Experts link, and comment on this video or a phone call to our customer service department, and we'd be happy to help you out in your journey.